y'all, it's Life, Jeremy,
Iwa,
and we hope that everybody out there is doing well at home, staying sane, and staying healthy. Today we're going to show you something that's easy to make at home, souped up ramen.
and you can use this from your pantry staples. Some of this you'll definitely have on hand, some of it we got from the Asian grocery store, so you'll definitely be able to make this with the ingredients that you have.
So some of the items that you're likely to have are of course going to be your ramen, which is mandatory for the dish. Today we're using kimchi flavored, really sweet, sour, and tangy. Next you're going to have some aromatics, garlic, onion, scallions, and then some vegetables of your choosing. So we're going to roll with bok choy because it's really crunchy and offers a nice texture to the chewy ramen. Next, eggs. And then of course, everyone's favorite, Spam.
So the things from the Asian grocery store that we got are fried bean curd skin, which is really delicious just to like dip in your soup really quick for a little bit additional crunch. You don't want to let it sit too long though because it'll get soggy. We have some extra kimchi to pump up the flavor here. And then we have shimeji mushrooms, but you can use any type of mushroom that you wanted in this dish. And we also have naruto, which is a fish cake. You'll see this in every anime ramen ever. All you really need to do is cut a thin slice to add to your ramen, and you can stick it in the freezer, so this lasts for a really long time, which is great. So if you are doing a grocery run, we definitely recommend an Asian grocery store if you have one near you, because they are fully stocked and you can get a lot of different really delicious ramen flavors there.
First thing we're going to do is chop up or slice some of our aromatics, and then we're going to fry the Spam and then cook up the mushrooms. So for the aromatics, you're going to want to slice the garlic into thin slices so that you have nice bite-sized pieces. Alright, so you got your aromatics there, and let's just take one of our scallion stems. Get this part where most of the flavor is.
And we have our favorite addition of Spam. We have leftover from our Spam musubi, so we can just refry this and add it to the ramen. You want thinly sliced here just because you don't want a giant hunk of Spam in your ramen.
And it gets nice and crispy too when it's thin sliced. So, got all our stuff chopped up, ready to fry. Alright, so let that oil heat up, and then we're going to throw the aromatics in, really release the flavor. We'll cook the Spam, and then we'll move that off to the side once it's ready, and we'll actually cook the shimeji mushrooms in the leftover flavor. So you got the Spam and the aromatics in there, and by now your kitchen should be smelling hella good. And by now the Spam should have a nice crispy texture on both sides. Remove it from the heat, and put it off to the side for later.
We're going to add in our mushrooms.
In the pan, you'll want to keep these separated because the mushrooms are going to dress the ramen towards the end, but the aromatics are going to go in to help flavor the broth right at the beginning.
And then we're going to add a little soy sauce, just on the mushrooms.
And a little bit of cooking wine. We ran out of Shaoxing, but this regular one should do as well. Alright, so the mushrooms are going to start to pick up a nice brown color, and that's when you're going to want to remove them from the heat and put them off to the side later along with the Spam. So the aromatics are going to be nice and crispy by now, and you're just going to want to put them off to the side for the broth. And what we're going to want to do is put the noodles in there, but you don't want to cook them all the way through because we're going to add them back into the broth later when that's ready. So drop your ramen in, and in the boiling water, let it cook for about a minute. So you're going to want to cook the noodles for about 60 seconds. Not too long so that they're cooked all the way through, but just enough so that the noodles start to separate. Because at the end, when the broth is ready, we're going to toss the noodles back in and it'll cook a little bit more. So after about 60 to 90 seconds of cooking, when all the noodles are separated, you want to turn your fire off, and you're going to strain these noodles and put them off to the side for later. So we got the noodles off to the side, and it's time to make the broth. So the reason that I like to make them separately is actually something that my grandma showed me. So after cooking the noodles, you're gonna see that the water that you cook them in are really murky, and that thickens up the soup and gives it kind of a waxier
starchy
taste.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when you cook the broth separately, it gives it a lot lighter, cleaner taste. This part. So in a separate pot, we're gonna cook the broth. Shout out to Grandma, by the way, who showed me this dish because growing up, my parents always worked in the restaurant, so I spent a lot of time with my grandma, and this was one of the easiest things to make of her arsenal of amazing dishes, but I always think of this one because it was so simple and it was something that took a very basic home staple and really dressed it up to make it feel like a gourmet meal.
This was actually the first dish that you ever made for me.
Yeah, so I invited Iwa over to my house party, as you might have heard from our Q&A. What I didn't tell you is that one of my friends actually got too drunk and was like passing out at the party, so I needed to get some food in her stomach to soak that up. So I whipped up this ramen in like 10 minutes and gave it to my friend, thereby demonstrating my cooking value to Iwa, and the rest is history.
Oh, but then you also spilled an entire bottle of soy sauce on me.
You spilled it when you decided to sit up on the counter and knocked over the soy sauce that was already there. So whose fault was it really? You tell me. Okay, so the water is simmering. We're gonna toss the aromatics in. All right. And then we're gonna drop the packet to add the flavor. And man, so many good memories. So another thing that my grandma would do is she would never use the packets from the ramen itself. She would always make her own broth flavoring. So she just had so many of these things laying around that when I left to college, she gave me a bag of hundreds of these ramen flavor packets. I guess she was worried that my dorm dining hall was gonna be too bland and that I wouldn't be able to survive. So
Did you use them? Did you use them all? I remember you had a bag when we moved in together of just ramen packets.
I used maybe like 20 to 30%, but if I used them all, I would definitely have a myriad of health issues. So I limited how much I consumed. Next, we're gonna wanna drop in the vegetable of your choosing. We chose bok choy because it's nice and crunchy and you can eat the entire thing. So just toss those right in the water after giving them a rinse.
The Naruto into thin slices.
So
Look, I'm ghouling it.
So once the vegetables and Naruto have had about 40 seconds to cook in there, I'm gonna wanna drop the noodles back in. So swirl those around and let them re-moisturize in the broth. So once the noodles back in there and the broth is simmering, you're gonna wanna drop your eggs in. Now the interesting thing is, even if you don't know how to poach an egg, you won't learn today. Basically with the noodles and everything in there, when you drop the egg in, it's gonna hold the egg in place so that it poaches properly. So you don't have to do the whole spinning or any of those techniques at all. Basically you just drop it in and let it cook.
No technique required.
No technique, let's go. So Iwa is the one who can poach eggs in this household. I can't, so this no technique poaching is perfect for me.
It is nice though, they're perfectly poached eggs just because of like they're sitting on the noodle.
So with the egg, you're going to let it cook for about 60 to 90 seconds, depending on how firm you want the poachiness of it, right? Is that a word? Poachiness? All right, poachiness of it. But one way to help cook it evenly is to spoon some of the broth on top while it's in there poaching.
Yeah, these are good.
All right, so we're going to turn the flame off and put the eggs off to the side for later. So now we're done cooking and Iwa's gonna get everything all plated up. So number one, we're gonna wanna transport the ramen and broth to a bowl.
Finish off, we're gonna top with some black sesame seeds.
Yeah.
Clear cooking. Which is my favorite. I put it on everything. And then some ichimi kogarashi, which is basically just like a Japanese chili pepper. Chili flakes are really good.
Souped up ramen, everything ready to go. And the way to eat this is you're gonna wanna pop the egg, open it up and get all that nice runny yolk going so you can dip the noodles or dip any of the toppings. And then when you get to the crispy tofu skin, what you're gonna do is dip that briefly into the broth and then just eat it right away while it's just got a little bit of the broth flavor but still crispy. Gotta love that runny yolk though. So there you have it, souped up ramen. Hopefully you can make this simple meal at home. So we're Nam Life, and we hope you enjoyed this dish. If you want to get more recipes like this, like, subscribe, or comment below. Peace.